Hello again, folks. Welcome. Today we're into the second chapter of Matthew's Gospel. And it's a fascinating start to life for Jesus here. This is God's Son. This is the King of Kings. This is the long-awaited Messiah, the Saviour of the world. And yet, talk about humble beginnings. He's not born into a palace as the son of a king. He's not born into wealth or fame. He's not even born into the big city. He's born into this small town, Bethlehem. He's placed in an animal's feeding trough. He's got shepherds coming to celebrate his birth, and that's about it. He's got a young mum and a carpenter father. What a strange way for the earthly life of God's Son to begin. And what we see in Matthew chapter 2 here are these amazing contrasts. Firstly, we have the contrast of two different kings. Herod, the king who desperately holds on to his kingship with strength of arm, scheming mind, and bitter repressive measures. And then we have Jesus, the king of lowly stature, the king of humility, the king whose life would be marked by self-sacrifice for the sake of others, a king who came to serve rather than be served himself. Secondly, we have the contrast in responses to Jesus. The wise men came to embrace the Saviour, to present gifts and to worship him. Herod refuses, though, to accept him. He rejects Jesus as king and he seeks out to terminate him. And this is still the story of today, isn't it? There are only two options that make sense when it comes to Jesus. Either we believe in him, we accept him as the Son of God, the Saviour of the world, and so we worship him with our lives, or on the other hand, we reject his kingship and his claims. We don't believe him to be God, and we just discard him entirely. There can be no middle ground. He can't just be a nice guy or a good teacher. And Matthew is acknowledging right at the start of his gospel that for the entirety of Jesus' life and ministry, this is going to be the case. Some would believe, others would not. Thirdly, then, we have the contrast of faith and lack of faith. So the Magi had faith to follow the star. They had faith not to reveal too much to Herod, and they had faith to worship when they found the baby. What a contrast that is with the teachers of the law and the chief priests. In verse 4, they show that they know their stuff, they know the scriptures, they know where the Messiah is to be born. They know it all, but they lack faith to believe. Instead of following and worshipping, they harden their hearts and they reject. And so again, Matthew sets up the question, what are we going to do with Jesus? Are we going to have faith and follow, or are we going to reject him entirely? The passage ends really with the stories then of the escape down to Egypt and then the return from Egypt after Herod dies much later on. And is this a bit of a parallel with Moses, perhaps? Well, there can be little doubt about that, really. In Exodus, Pharaoh tried to destroy the people in Egypt, but Moses led them out of Egypt into the land of promise. And so here we have Herod like a new Pharaoh, and he tries to kill the firstborn, Jesus, and in his anger he slaughters other innocent firstborns in Bethlehem. But he fails to kill the Saviour, just as Pharaoh failed to kill Moses. Eventually, Moses led the people out of bondage and slavery, and now Jesus, this new Moses, is going to lead people out of a much worse bondage and slavery, that is, slavery to sin. This is a fascinating introduction to Jesus' life, and Matthew sets it all in the context of Israel, past and present, and begins to look to the future. So that's us for today, but join us again tomorrow. We'll move forward with this story into chapter 3. Until then, God bless.